welcome to Year 2 of the Funding Love podcast. I'm Mallory Elrod.
And I'm Caitlin Duckworth. We are two adoptive moms that seek to love, support, and elevate all corners of the adoption triad, including adoptive families, adoptees, and birth parents.
We do that through honest conversation with both expert and everyday voices about all things adoption and more, all while running our nonprofit, Funding Love.
We create post-adoption experiences that strengthen bonds, build community, and restore people.
We are Funding Love,
the podcast.
Welcome back. Welcome to episode 81 of the Funding Love podcast. I'm Mal, and this week we have guest Laura Hernandez from Dallas, Texas. She is a wife and mama to 10 amazing kids. She is the founder of Mama Systems, a coaching business that helps moms bring peace to their homes through systems so they can be intentional with their family and show up as the best mama possible. This episode is cram full of practical advice for creating peace in motherhood, and don't we all want that? We also share some raw, unedited, vulnerable moments surrounding adoption, connecting with our kids, and all of the mom guilt and shame that we carry as women. So we hope that you can find encouragement in those while also maybe extending us some grace if it hits upon a nerve of your own story. But we hope that you enjoy this conversation with Laura as much as we did. Let's give it a listen. Welcome, Laura. We are so glad that you are here with us today, and we are so excited for this conversation.
I am too. This is really fun. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yes, I feel like I'm really pumped because I know I'm going to learn a lot and take a few mom tips with me. So I'm pumped about this conversation.
Well, that's good. Right. Yes. So we know that throughout this whole interview, you're going to be unpacking all kinds of wisdom and tips and tricks for managing a large household. But we did want to start first with talking about how you are a mom, an adoptive mom. Caitlin and I are both adoptive moms. So why don't you share a little bit with us about your journey to becoming an adoptive family?
Yeah. So we knew that we wanted to adopt before we got married. And then after our third biological, my husband was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we can do this now, because if we accidentally get pregnant again, I don't think I'm going to be able to do any more kids. And so, which is always my favorite, because I'm like,
I know, that's very ironic.
And so we started foster care and did all the training, all the things. And we got Andrew in our home when he was 3 days old in the middle of the night. And he was an emergency placement and lovely and wonderful, and stayed with us for 8 months, and then went back to his mom. And she had 2 more kiddos, and we had 2 more kiddos, and we had moved up to Seattle at that time. And I mean, really long story, a little bit shorter. They got back into care and rights were going to be terminated. And so we kind of came into the picture as an adoptive placement, and we had to move back to Texas to get them. And so it was right after we had our 5th biological child. So we went from 4 kids to 8 kids in a 6-month period, along with a cross-country move, along with a rental house and home remodeling of this house and new job and all the things, right? So it was kind of chaotic. And that's kind of where this vision of I need something to rely on. I need systems, and searching for things. I couldn't find things. And so we made it up. And that process of making it up has kind of led to Mama Systems. So yeah.
Wow. And so how many kids do you have now?
8. 10.
You have 10 kids. So that was only 8. So when did you have your last 2? Are they biological, or are they through adoption as well? Okay.
Yeah. And I have a problem that I really love babies.
That is not a problem. I love that.
Yeah. The burning question for everyone is, yes, we are done. We are complete with our 10. To answer that for you. So our youngest is 4 years old.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. What now? And what's your oldest? So what's your age range gap? You have 4 to
17.
17. Okay.
Yeah, you definitely need some systems in place, girl. That is a range of things, activities, and everywhere, which way. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All of it.
So you have this Mama Systems, which is a website. I know you have an Instagram where you help coach other moms and have lots of resources there. So I know that you said that you kind of were thrown into it and had to come up with your own systems. So maybe tell us a little bit about that process, but also when did you have that desire of oh, I want to share this with other women?
Yeah. I mean, it was a journey and a process for sure. So I think looking for things that were okay, we've got to figure out how we were homeschooling our biological ones. Our foster ones had to go to public school. So there was all these different different things, right? So I'd look for homeschool systems and it'd be like, oh, do this, plan your day like this. Like we all want that consistency. We all want to make sure we're getting the things done that we need to get done. And so I was just trying to find something, but the homeschool things didn't take into consideration that we had little people getting on and off the bus, and we had to go meet them at the bus, and then we had therapists in our home, and we had caseworkers in our home, and like all the different nuances of being a foster family, right? So it's like, well, that doesn't work. So finally, I was just like, okay, I've got to figure out what's important to us. There's things that I value and felt really easy to put in place when I had 2 or 3 or whatever. But then with all of them, it was like, we're not making time for any of the things that we value. And so it was just a process of figuring out what those things are and then how we're going to implement them. And so after a while, it was like, okay, we have peace in our home. We have 10 kids and our house is, this may come across as really cruddy, but like our house was very peaceful, and I'd be able to put my feet up at night and have a glass of wine, and the kids are in the other room playing. And I would go into other people's homes and immediately I feel stressed out and chaotic. And like, I'm like, oh gosh, there's no order here. There's no peace here. And so just kind of seeing that, making that connection of like, oh, the systems we have in place have brought this peace. It's brought this like intentionality to our home that's a blessing. And I want to bless other moms with that too and help them. So it was very slow, just helping other friends, helping them figure out their days and their schedules and all the things. And then I'm like, I think I can do this as a business. It'd be so fun. So I love it. It's like working all these different puzzles and helping people put things in place in their home so that they can have peace.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, when you say there's systems now, for me, it comes down to like, okay, is there a calendar? Is there like room? Like, I'm curious, give me like a glimpse into what like a system would be. And when someone comes to you, like say I were to come to you, like, I need help. Do you go into their homes? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So I think of a system as anything that we can take off of your mind. Like,
okay.
Whatever I can take out of your mental to-do list, lessen your decision fatigue. Like, let's do that. So that could be that you have diapers delivered every month to your door. So you don't have to ever worry about going in and get diapers, right? Like subscribe and save could be a system, or it could be a monthly calendar that you have that just works really well for your family, and like having all your Google calendars sync together. So whatever it is that's going to make life easier for you that we can have kind of on automatic, that's what we're going for.
Yeah.
I love that. So my husband, both of our husbands are like in business together, and my husband's in sales, selling travel. And like, he's always saying, you need to like put things in place for the things that you specifically don't need to do so that you can do what you need to do better. Like there's specific things in your day that it's like, no, only me, Mallory, can do those things. So I really need to remove the things that like anybody could do. See, he had to convince me of this when we were just getting a house cleaner. He was like, babe, anybody can scrub a toilet.
Yes.
Mallory doesn't need to waste time scrubbing a toilet because Mallory needs to. So it sounds like you're kind of saying the same things to moms. Is
All
this
the time?
Okay.
All the time. Because we think about getting a house cleaner. It's like, well, I should do that because I'm at home and I'm not working a full-time job, so I should be able to do all of these things.
Right.
And we just
but that's like the guilt though, I feel.
Mom guilt.
It's
Yeah.
that mindset. Yeah. And so to be able to work with someone and say like, you don't have to be doing this. You know what? Your kids can help out. We can build this teamwork mentality in your home where your kids contribute to the family, that they take care of their own stuff. You're not doing everything for them. But there's so much freedom in that, having kids that are independent and can take care of things on their own, that can make their own lunches, that can get dressed, that can, all the little tiny steps a day that we take on for them that we don't need to be doing. Giving someone freedom from that is an amazing gift.
And dare I say, like, just really good parenting, because I feel like we're preparing them for adulthood. I mean, when we look at raising kids, that's what we're doing as parents. It's like we are trying to get you, to be a healthy, happy, productive adult. And so I think that there's I know plenty of times when I was in that college age of like a college kid that was like, I don't know how to start a washing machine. Like, you're not doing them any favors by not allowing them to also help out with those things.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of times I like try to help moms see it as like, these are roommate responsibilities. So when your kid goes off to college, what do you want them to know how to do? Like, you want them to know how to wash their dishes and put them in the dishwasher. You want them to know how to pick up their dirty clothes and put them in the washer. Like, just very simple things that I think that we just end up doing because it's easier for us to do instead of just making them do it because you're the parent. I we're really doing them a disservice, and we're raising entitled little people that have so many thoughts. I'll just stop there. So
yeah, no, you said it, girl.
You said it.
Yeah.
We're hallelujah. We agree there. But no, I am curious if though, like how the process would work. So are you a consultant then for these moms? Okay.
Yes.
So if I come to you, do you come to my home or do you see videos of my home? Because the reason I say is not everyone I know wants a clean home, but I feel like when you don't have a tidy home, that adds to chaos immediately. I feel like that to me is my number one thing for me to feel at peace in my home. So do you get a inside look into their home physically? Is that part of it?
I have done in-home services before, but mainly it's just over Marco Polo and Zoom and all the things, right?
Got it.
We have a 12-week little program and walk through different things of like, okay, we're going to assess everything that's going on in your life using Marco Polo or Zoom or whatever, or pictures. I'll kind of look at the areas of like, okay, these are the things that stress you out. How can we kind of declutter those? So we go from assessing to eliminating, which is a lot of decluttering and clearing out things that we don't need. And time suckers that we don't need, and activities that we don't need, and all the things that fill us up, that not in a good way fill us up, but just fill up our time and fill up our space, fill up our mental energy. We look at those things and eliminate them. And then we work on automating things and getting things on a schedule and a rhythm that makes it super easy. So you're not having to sit there and decide like, okay, what are we doing for dinner tonight? Okay, oh gosh, I need to go get groceries. Oh gosh, we need to won't do any of that. We're going to automate as much as we can. And then we talk about delegating to your kids and kind of building that team mentality with them. And then planning, go through all the weeks here, planning and prioritizing the things that really matter to you and creating like a daily rhythm and a weekly rhythm for you. We talk about meal planning and laundry and batch working and self-care and making sure that you're able to pour into each of your kids how they need to be poured into. We want to create that and make that a priority as well. So.
Oh, wow. I love that. Yeah. And being a big family of 12 and having 10 kids. So you do, that's just cool to hear that you prioritize time with each kid too.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily like, okay, you get 10 minutes here and you get 10 minutes here, but it's just being aware of hey, you know what? Benjamin really loves quality time together. So if I can bring him in the kitchen when I'm cooking something, that fills him up. So just being aware of that and knowing that Sam loves doing puzzles and Max loves doing projects with me. So just being aware of those little nuances in each kid and how their love tanks are filled and being intentional with that, I think is really helpful.
But clearing your mind and clearing your space allows you to be aware of those and then therefore have time to be intentional. That is, that is huge. So we know you offer the coaching and the courses, but your website also offers tons of other resources. So tell our listeners a little bit about those and what types of resources that you have available.
We have a lot. Can share two of my favorites are the self-care guide and the chore guide. And the self-care guide kind of walks you through, this is not a go get a pedicure self-care guide. This is hey, let's assess the things that are going on internally with your mind that are negating the things you should be doing. The mindset of, well, there's too much going on. I need to take the back seat. I'm not worth it. There's not enough money. I shouldn't spend that. All those things that you're constantly having to kind of fight to say that, no, I'm okay. I'm okay to take up space. I'm okay to be here. I'm okay to spend money on. I'm okay to get a babysitter for it. I'm worth that. So working through kind of some of those lies that we believe, and then creating a plan for that of okay, so I know that I need quiet time every morning. And so how am I going to make that happen? What do I need to do? And if that involves asking someone for help, then we create a plan for that too, and kind of work through the talking boundary of, okay, I need this space and time. So that's the self-care guide. And the chore guide is kind of that wanting to free up the mom from doing all the things for all the people. Because I think that's just kind of our default. And maybe we start when they're young and then we just keep going and doing it all. And it gets more and more and more, and until we kind of want to break, or we do break,
Yeah.
So delegating those things out and building that teamwork, those are kind of two of my favorite resources, but there are a ton on there of just different things that you can look into. And for adoptive mamas, I have become very passionate. Our 3 that we adopted all have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And I'm sure that you guys know about this, but often people know about FAS, this in fetal alcohol syndrome, and they don't know about the whole spectrum disorder. And so the FAS part is only 8% of the whole spectrum, which means there's 92% of kids out there who have some form of FASD that look like they're quote unquote normal kids. So it's this invisible disability that a lot of our adopted kids are struggling with. 70% of kids in foster care have some form of an FASD. This is all according to the CDC. So if you need to check my facts here, 1 in 20 kids, like in the general population, have some form of FASD. It's 2.5 times more common than autism. And we don't talk about it. And so kind of my heart in our journey of adoption and then figuring this out and being like, oh my gosh, why weren't we educated on this in the adoption process? Because there are resources and there are things you can do, but early intervention, you know? So I have all of that on my website as well. So
wow, that's incredible. And actually I'm very uneducated. I'm like in that percentage of like, oh, they don't talk about that. I mean, I know fetal alcohol syndrome, again, like being an adoptive mom, it was always kind of on there of like, you know, well, she had this and this is a possibility, you know, whatever. But no, the extended education surrounding that and then the whole like spectrum of it, no, that's never been explained to me. So I feel like that's super valuable information. So what do you have? Do you have like, because I saw that you have a lot of downloadables. Is it just like links to articles? What do you have on your website for that?
Yeah. So I actually have a podcast called Mama Advocate. And kind of my heart behind that is to marry the two worlds of adoption and special needs, because I think we often in like adoption books and things will hear, okay, they're going to be developmentally delayed when they come to you, or they're going to have problems because of trauma. And they're going to have so we have these little things to hang our hats on of like explaining some of the behaviors and some of the things.
Sure.
But that FASD piece is not a part of that conversation. And I'm not saying that all of that is FASD. It's all intertwined with the trauma and like all of that. It's all there. But I feel like we just don't even address this piece of it, right? We'll talk about, oh, she did drugs when she's pregnant. I'm like, okay, well, she did drugs when she's pregnant. Then she might have also very likely have been drinking. And drinking affects the baby way more than drugs ever could. And again, we don't talk about that. So I know that in our state, in Texas, that there are programs that our kids can have access to if they have that FASD diagnosis, and the families can get help. And so a lot of just the tiresome day to day that you can get help for. But these things aren't announced and they're not publicly displayed. And so on my website, to answer that question, there are just some facts and some links to some different things that you can educate yourself on. And then also just to the Mama Advocate podcast of trying to marry these two worlds and bring in experts that are familiar with FASD, so that my hope is that adoptive moms would listen and be like, oh, that sounds a lot like my kid, and kind of put that together. Because I think that my ideal clientele would be a mom who just found out that she has a kid with FASD, and I can help bring peace to their homes through systems. Like, those kids thrive on consistency and just routine and knowing what's happening. And the parents are dying, like they're dying. Their households are being run by their kids. And that's just so hard. Like, it is so hard. And so I feel like I can bring that empathy to it and then bring the systems in place to help the families thrive. Like, there are definitely things like connection and all those things that are important and good and wonderful. And there's this whole family piece of this family needs to have some stability. And so helping bring that piece in.
No, I love that. I love that you're providing just like practical, applicable help. Like, it's not just like this figurative of like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes help feels like nice words and encouragement, whereas this is like, no, this is something you can physically do and put into place that can be helpful and make a change.
Yeah. It's really fun.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
Awesome.
So yeah, I've already dug through your website, but I'm going to be digging through it a lot more and giving your podcast to listen. So definitely thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
So I want to know, I'm curious, what has been the biggest challenge of becoming a large family so quickly? Because like you said, it was, for lack of a better term, like overnight, essentially, that you went from 5 to 8.
Yeah.
And then 2 more, and then 10.
Yeah, I like those 2 more were super easy because I mean, everybody loves a baby, right? Like,
Yeah.
babies are just loved in our family. So they're super, super easy. That quick turnover it was a lot. And I think that I can say that I'm picturing this huge mountain, and I feel like those words don't do any justice to it. But days when I would just back up against the wall and be like, if I can just get them in bed tonight, like, we just got to make it to bedtime. And I know that so many moms have been there, just like, when is it coming? When is nap time coming? But we had 5 little people, 4 and under, all in diapers, all in cribs. And so I was like, if I can just get them in their cribs, and I know they're safe and they're not going to get into anything, kind of, and we'll be okay. And so I realized I can't live this way, right? That was kind of the turning point for me of like, who wants to live that way? It was chaotic. And I remember calling a friend who had just adopted a sibling group. And I'm like, I wanted her to tell me that it was going to be normal and that I was going to feel like this was our family at some point. Cause it just felt like somebody had dropped off their kids and was like, here, have fun. And I was like, I know they're my kids, but my gosh, this is so hard. The feelings weren't there and all the things. So it was just really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's something that also is not talked about enough, is like, and I think it, again, is surrounded by like maybe guilt or shame or something, of the fact that it is hard to connect with children that aren't biologically yours, like you, that they essentially are. They just kind of like show up in your life, and that can be difficult. And that's not shameful. It's just like kind of a fact, and it's something you have to work and build towards. And which is why at Funding Love, we're so passionate about helping families to build bonds and giving them like an organic, fun opportunity to kind of build and strengthen some bonds. But I mean, I just love your vulnerability and your honesty there, because I think a lot of adoptive moms struggle with that and feeling like they can't say like, I'm struggling right now with this. Of course, I'm taking care of all their basic needs and I'm doing my best to keep them safe and make them feel loved. But like, it's really hard when those feelings aren't necessarily like this I don't know what word I'm trying to say, but you know what I mean.
No, because I feel that way with our bio kids. I look at them and I'm like, wow, like, you're amazing. Everything about you just lights me up and brings me joy. And then our 3, I'm like, y'all are so difficult. And they're just really hard a lot of times. And so it's hard to find joy in them. It's hard to like, those feelings don't just bubble up out of you. Right. And I think that I had to get to a place where, and this is so vulnerable, and I'm like, sure, I'm going to get hate mail for it. Whatever, here it is. Cause I know there's a mom out there who needs to hear this, but, just getting to a place of like, you know what, that attachment piece may never come, that love, that feeling of like, oh, it's my child, may never come. And that's okay. Like, that's okay. You are taking care of them and you are loving them and you are giving them the best shot at life.
Yeah. I mean, and it also shows that like love, and which I think our culture and society has put such like a bad spin on, like love is a feeling. And if you don't feel it, then it's not love and you might as well move on. It's so not true. Love is an action. Love is a verb. Love is a choice. And so, I mean, there's even marriages that need to hear that today, of like, sometimes you don't have that lovey-dovey feeling, but you're making that choice to move forward in that commitment. And it's the same with the parenting too. It's like, I'm making the choice to love you. And I mean, like, really love you. Like, I'm going to provide for your every need. I'm going to hug you. I'm going to cuddle you. I'm going to tell you I love you, even though like sometimes, and some days some days you wake up with feelings a little bit different, but some days it's more, some days it's less, but that you're making that choice, for that person.
Preach. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being so vulnerable, because I do know for certain that there are mamas who needed to hear that, because they are probably sitting in this guilt of saying like, why am I not feeling this? Am I the one who's got like, is something wrong with me? I love them. I do love them, but why am I not connecting like I dreamed I would? Right. And to know that doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a bad mom. It doesn't mean you're less than. It doesn't mean that you're not giving your children what they need. You're still loving them. You're still a family unit. They're still a blessing to you. So those feelings don't discount that. So I'm so grateful that you were so vulnerable there, because that is something that we all need to hear. For those bad,
love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like in a lot of the books and the trainings and all the things, it is very much like, do X and Y and you'll get Z. Like, do this connected activity and you'll build this great attachment, right? And I'm like, I'm doing these things. Why aren't they happening? And it feels like I must be doing something wrong because this is all like, nobody is saying that exactly, but that's the messaging you're getting from.
For sure.
I say all the adoption books. I don't know.
Yeah. But it also points to that, like, adoption isn't normal. And that's okay for us to admit too. Like, mothers are supposed to raise and parent their children. Like, that's the way, like, we were designed. And we know that we live in a broken world and that in some situations that just can't happen. And so, you know, we are committed to loving and caring, for those that can't happen, but that you can see that that's not the design of how we were designed to be, you know? And even for a child, like, it's kind of heartbreaking. We say all the time, you know, adoption is so complex and so complicated because adoption is love, but adoption is loss. And like, even that, like, adoptee should never be made to feel like they have to feel so grateful that they were adopted by this wonderful family because they're feeling the same way, you know, like, well, I've done all the things. I do love my family, but I don't feel the connection that I would have felt to a biological family.
Something missing, and what's missing.
Yes. I think that we need to take away the shame and the guilt that comes with that stigma of like, well, you know, love makes a family. I mean, it does, like a family unit, but at the same time, we do have to admit that there is something to biology and to biological families. And we need to stop like shaming and guilting adoptive families and adoptees for saying, I love my family, but it's just not the same. I don't think an adoptee should feel any guilt or shame over that, just as much as I don't think an adoptive mom should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said. Well said, Mallory.
Well, we've talked about that being hard, and we can totally see that, relate, and understand that on like a really deep level. But tell us, let's turn it around and take the bright side. What's been a blessing of having such a large family?
I mean, this is what I've always wanted. I've always wanted a ton of kids, and I've like whittled it down from 20 to just 10. So I feel like that's
you wanted 20.
Yeah, when I was little, I'd be like, I want 19 kids, or I want 20 kids. And,
I love that.
Oh my goodness.
What do you, I don't,
yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know. I didn't know anybody with that many children.
Well, you got halfway there. That's amazing.
I know. I got my husband up from 2 to our 10. So that's good.
Whoa.
He hasn't wanted to like,
that's good.
Get rid of 8 of them yet. It's fun. Like, there's always somebody to play with. There's never a dull moment, whether good or bad. Right. I think my favorite thing about it is watching them love each other, which, don't hear me say that we're like Mary Poppins here and that we've got this all together all the time. Right. Like, they fight, whatever, they're kids. But just like seeing my 17-year-old love on my 4-year-old and be excited. Like, she texts me and asks if she can go pick him up for Mother's Day out. And I'm like, yes, please. And she's like, oh, yay. Like, she's excited to go love on him and bring him a treat. And it's just like, those little moments are the things I grasp onto, because there is so much hard. And so the little beauties, I'm like, oh, I'm taking that. I'm just going to think about that often, because we need this little buckets of hope, you know?
Wow. I love it. I mean, we are only a family of 6, I have 4, but I do love having the many siblings and having them all around. I always feel like in my moments when like life can get hard or whatever, it's like, oh, I'm so grateful that no matter what, like our little pod of 6 has each other. Like, it just, it's like there's a security in knowing, you know, with that family teams like mindset, it's like, no matter what, if friends come and go, if outside family members come and go, like, we are always going to be together. Like, I just love that. Moving on, you know that you have that have anybody that has a large family can, it can be really complex with tons of moving parts, and like large could be, you know, I feel like in this world, like anything over kids, people's eyes start to like pop out for some reason. They're like, what? You have more than 4 kids? But we also know that even moms that have 1 or 2 kids, or you've got a toddler in the house, or someone that just got a new foster placement and it's an older child, there's a lot in motherhood that can be overwhelming and challenging. So before we go, I would love for you to just share with our listeners out there, a mama that's maybe feeling overwhelmed today, whether she has 1 kid or 10, just something that she could do today that would help her to have a more productive and positive day? Like one practical tip.
I'll speak to that first part first, though. I think that so often as moms, we are really quick to compare ourselves. And so, like, if you're listening, you're like, oh, she has 10 kids. I can't hold it together with one or two. And I'm like falling apart here. I think it's really important that we continue to look around and see the blessings of other people's lives and not compare ourselves, like not put ourselves one up or one down or wherever that is, that we just encourage each other. Because I think none of us really want to show up as that person, right? I feel like if I'm looking at you and thinking she has it all together, what's wrong with me? Like, I don't want to show up with this attitude of like, what am I doing wrong all the time? Right. And I also don't want to show up with like, I got it together and she does not, like that pridefulness, right? So we're either pride or shame. And if we can just stay right here and get this middle ground of encouraging other moms and finding things that they're doing great, it's a beautiful thing. All that to say.
Yeah, but I also agree with you in that, and just the sense of not everybody's designed the same. So we're all designed differently. So like everyone knows their own capacity and they know what is going to bring their home peace. So if you know that 2 is your max for your family's peace and their joy, you don't need to look at somebody else. Oh, they have 10, so they're doing better than me. Or there is that. And I like that let's just knock that off and, and look at the joys and the blessings in other people. I love that. And don't compare. That is such great work.
Because we all have different giftings and everything, and husbands and houses and incomes and like all the things are so different, and our kids' personalities are so different. You could have one kid that's 10 times harder than somebody's 4 kids, right? So much grace and level playing field. We're all doing a great job.
Yes. So what's your one practical tip that they can do today? No worries. Yeah.
I think just thinking through your day and figuring out the most chaotic part of your day, and that probably comes quickly to someone's mind of like the morning times. What's one thing you could do today to make the morning time a little easier? So maybe that's moving shoes next to the front door. Like if we're always looking for shoes, we can put them next to the front door, or prepping coffee the night before, which is like my number one. Why are we all not doing that? Everybody needs to be doing that so that you can walk out and have a fresh pot of coffee right when you get up, right? So just think of that one thing that you could do to make that time of day, whatever's the most chaotic for you, a little bit easier.
Yeah, I love that. So it feels like such common sense, but then it's one of those things where we just get overwhelmed and we don't think about it. But you're right. Like there's certain things where it's like, every time I'm running out of the house, I'm looking for my keys, or the kids can't find their shoes. It's like that actually does have a simple solution. We just get caught up to never fix it. You know what I mean? It's like we never take the moment to actually be like, I'm going to always put my keys on this hook, or kids, always take your shoes off and put them in this bin. Like,
because we're just dealing with all the things that are coming to us. Right. And so if we can just take one thing and be like, okay, what can we do about this one thing? And it just takes that mindfulness and sitting still with yourself for a hot minute and then making that happen.
No, I love it. It's so true.
Love it. Well, thank you for all of the wisdom and just grace that you're giving all of our listeners too in this conversation, because I feel like this is just yes, a conversation for adoptive moms, but moms and families in general. So I appreciate your wisdom there. But before we wrap up the podcast, we like to ask one fun little question. So at the Funding Love podcast, we like to end with a little extra love. So what is one thing that you're loving right now in life? A book, a show, a hobby? What is it?
I am loving my morning time routine. I'm just really digging it right now. I feel like it's not like we're getting through summer of like kind of sleeping in a little bit. Whatever that means. And then getting back into my rhythm of like, okay, this is my time. I have my coffee in the morning, I get to read and then
what is your morning routine?
Run us through it.
Yeah. So here we go. I also have a great resource on creating a great morning routine that I'll share with you as well. So, but it helps you kind of think through these things and plan it out to make it a better morning. So I wake up ridiculously early and I don't like it. I'm not a morning person, but 5 o'clock, because I have to get people on the bus at 6:30. So I need to wake them up at 6. And so all of those things, wake up at 5 and have coffee and read and journal and then read some more. And one of my goals for this year is to write more letters. And so I have all of my stationery right there. Like, I think that's a big piece of it, is having your intentions like in the space that you're going to be in. So that I'm not Like I that would just never happen if I had to get up and go get stationary. I'd get lost 15 times along the way, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just never happen. So do all that. And then I set alarms on my phone for each thing. Like, so I have to wake up someone at 6, I have to wake up someone at 6:15, to wake up someone at 7, and except on Tuesday, Thursday. There's all these nuances. And so having to sit there and think about, okay, it's Monday. So it's 7. Okay. Like just all of the thought that's constantly going on when you're trying to plan all that out every single morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. And I can't be present in what I really want to be intentional with, right? So having those alarms set, I can just read until the alarm goes off. And that's it, right? I'm not like constantly looking at the clock. So that's kind of after I get everyone out the door. My last one that I drop off at 8:30, I drop him off and then go walk on a trail over there and then come home and get ready for the day. It's wonderful.
Nice.
That is a nice morning routine. Just to feel organized in it and to know that you've given yourself that time in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that I know Mallory's really getting good at that. You've made a little routine for your morning, and I was, and then I've fallen off. But I can tell a difference in me when you get a little bit lax with those things that bring you, that how to start your day off right.
Yeah.
So instead of getting up at 5:45, I'm getting up at 6:25, 6:30, and it gives me like 15 minutes to have that time. Well, that's not enough for me to feel like I'm ready to start my day. I can't even open my journal with 15 minutes, So yeah, that is so important. I love that is bringing you joy and peace in your family and your life.
And I love the way that you have it scheduled out with the alarms that kind of like, okay, this is what I have to do now. Then I can go back to this until I have to do that. Because what I'm seeing in your schedule, it's like you almost have your little self-care time all in there. Because in that time between 5 and 8:39, like you have, read something that's like fortified your soul, you've journaled, you've done something that you like was a goal that you wanted to do, which was like write letters. And then you've also exercised, like you went for a walk and got your body moving, you got outside, you got vitamin D and fresh air. Like it's cool that you had self-care like tucked into those moments of, okay, well, I've got to get this done. Okay, I'm going to go drive them there, but I'm still getting all this stuff done. Like I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think often we're just so reluctant to do that because it feels so rigid. And it feels like, okay, I'm living my life by a spreadsheet or by a very calculated moment by moment, right? But I think when we can sit down and plan it all out like that, it actually brings us so much life. So instead of being restricting, it kind of gives us the scaffolding for the ideal life that we want to be living.
Yeah. And I'm just going to add this in there too, because I'm like on a roll today, ladies.
Please.
Like,
I love it.
I must be in a mood. But like, I also love that. Like that is actual true soul, like self-care, like doing those intentional things that you just listed. Because I think like you nodded to earlier, like you're not talking about like the go treat yourself girl kind of self-care that you do once you've hit a brick wall, you go get a manicure, you eat 3 slices of cake, and then you get back to running until you hit a brick wall again. Like that's not actually self-care. Like I think that the world's idea of what self-care is to go buy yourself something really expensive, get your hair and your nails did and eat way too much sugar isn't actually self-care. Like that's not actually good for us. But these little things, these little like deposits that you're doing every single day is what's true self-care that like gives you that energy to like be sustained and keep going. Like
so
that's actually
so you don't hit
self-care.
That brick wall.
You never hit the brick wall because every day you're doing the things that sustain you. So
yeah. It's amazing.
Well, I'm going to go get my nails done and have a piece of cake. So don't judge me.
I'm not judging. That's just for fun.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Oh, man.
All right. Now that I've ranted, rant over.
I love it. It's so
rants. True. It is so true. You're preaching today. This is the Funding Love podcast with Mallory. I'm just kidding. Oh man. Well, Laura, this has been so fun and so life-giving for me, honestly. And so I'm just so grateful that you took the time to join us on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's really fun hanging out with you.
Yes.
Absolutely. And thank you, listeners, for listening to this episode of the Funding Love podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Funding Love podcast. guess what? We have set the date for our second annual fundraising gala. It is the Garden Gala, and it is going to be held on April 26, 2024 at the Four Seasons Resort in Orlando. Tickets won't go on sale until November 1st, but right now you can claim one of our 3 sponsorships. We have 2 gold sponsorships available and 1 guest of honor sponsorship. To learn more about those, you can email us at hello@fundinglove.com. Here at Funding Love, we are a crowd-funded nonprofit, which means that people like you can make a lasting impact on the lives of adoptees, birth moms, and adoptive families through your generous donations. If you'd like to give a one-time gift today, head to fundinglove.com/donate, knowing that when you partner with us, you are funding love.